Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're digging into a really interesting dynamic, Chinese companies looking at Mexico.
Yes, specifically how Mexico might be becoming sort of an indirect route to the U.S. market for them.
Exactly, potentially getting around some of those U.S. tariffs. We've got some material on this and we'll try to unpack how it works, looking at, the U.S.-China trade picture and the USMCA agreement.
It definitely shows how interconnected everything is. Global trade, policy shifts.
Yeah.
Businesses adapt pretty quickly.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Why is this happening now? What's the background with the U.S. and China trade that's driving this?
Well, over the last few years, you've seen the U.S. impose significant tariffs on a lot of goods coming directly from China.
Right, the trade friction we've heard so much about.
Exactly. The idea was to encourage more U.S. production, deal with trade imbalances, but a key effect is making those Chinese goods more expensive here.
Makes sense. So that's the push factor. How does Mexico and this USMCA fit in? How's that the potential pull?
Okay, so the USMCA, that's the agreement that replaced NAFTA. It has what they call rules of origin.
Rules of origin?
Yeah. Basically, rules about how much of a product needs to be made or processed within North America, the US, Mexico, or Canada to qualify for tariff-free treatment when it crosses borders between them.
Okay, so it's not enough to just pass through Mexico.
No, not at all. The idea behind the rules was to boost North American manufacturing. But if a company, say, from China sets up operations in Mexico and performs enough substantial work there, like assembly or manufacturing key components, the final product might then qualify as North American under USMCA rules.
Ah, I see. So they could potentially export it to the U.S. from Mexico with lower or maybe even zero tariffs compared to shipping directly from China.
That seems to be the strategy being explored, yes. It's about meeting that USMCA threshold.
So are we actually seeing this? Are Chinese firms building factories in Mexico or partnering up?
The signs point that way. We're hearing about increased Chinese direct investment in Mexico, setting up manufacturing facilities, or forming joint ventures with existing Mexican manufacturers.
Interesting. Both approaches then.
Right. It gives them a base to do that value-added work needed to meet those USMCA origin rules.
Are there specific industries where this is cropping up more? Any examples?
Well, one sector getting a lot of attention is electric vehicles, EVs.
Okay, why EVs?
China is a huge player in EV battery technology and production. So it makes sense they might look to assemble vehicles or components in Mexico for the U.S. market.
Right, given the push for EVs here.
Yeah.
Any others?
Solar energy components could be another area. Again, China's a major producer. And setting up shop in Mexico could be a way around tariffs on solar panels or parts.
And what are the folks who track this stuff saying? Trade analysts, economists?
They're definitely watching this. It's seen as a logical strategic move by Chinese companies reacting to the tariff environment, a way to maintain access to the big U.S. market.
So it's acknowledged as a real trend.
Yes, it's part of the ongoing adjustment in global supply chains.
What could this mean for the U.S. economy, though, if the tariffs are being sort of bypassed?
Well, it could potentially dampen the intended effect of those scares, right?
Yeah.
If goods meant to be more expensive find another way in, it might affect U.S. manufacturers who are expecting more protection.
And the trade balance.
Could influence that too, yeah. It complicates the picture of how effective those direct tariffs are.
Does this put pressure on U.S. policy? Could we see changes to the USMCA or other measures?
It's definitely something policymakers are likely aware of or becoming aware of. If the trend grows, you could imagine discussions about maybe tightening rules of origin or looking more closely at investments in Mexico raises questions about enforcement and, the adaptability of trade policy.
Okay, so summing it up. Facing U.S. tariffs, some Chinese companies seem to be using Mexico, setting up actual operations there to potentially leverage the USMCA rules and gain lower tariff access to the U.S. market.
That's a good way to put it. It's a clear example of supply chains finding new paths in response to trade policy shifts, real-world adaptation.
It really highlights how global trade works, doesn't it? Actions in one area cause ripples, and businesses find ways to navigate. Definitely something to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. It makes you think about the longer-term game, how these patterns might evolve, and what the next adaptation might be.
A great point to end on. Thanks for walking us through that, and thanks to our listeners for joining this deep dive.